Hi, I'm Tim Martin and I'm with Work in Confidence. And today we're going to look at spotting and stopping bullying to create a safer working environment. I always think it's quite useful on these things to just step back to first definitions and say, actually, what do we mean by workplace bullying? And I would say a good definition is workplace bullying is the repetitive and systematic engagement of interpersonally abusive behaviours that negatively affect both the work environment and the targeted individual. So having defined bullying, let's move on to a few of the typical signs and how do you really spot it? The most obvious one is aggression, and that can be actually active aggression or passive aggression. Then you move on to things like ridiculing, unfair public criticism of people, potentially overbearing supervision or misuse of power, spreading rumours about an individual, and then things like scapegoating, undermining or picking on somebody. Then role manipulation, unwarranted removal of responsibilities, or expecting someone to do something which is fundamentally outside of their job description and or skill set. You might then get allocating atypical roles, so requiring someone to do something which is just not within their job role. Potentially unreasonable expectations of people, setting them up to fail, whether that's due to their skill set or their resources available to them. And then moving on from that, other things can include denying someone's training or promotion opportunities and potentially excluding them, marginalising them, or even failing to provide recognition. And when these things begin to happen repeatedly towards one or a group of people from one person, you need to begin to look out for the presence of bullying. And it's not always immediately obvious. So if we go on to look at the extent of bullying, how often it occurs, in the UK it appears that almost 60% of people have witnessed or been the victims of bullying. But sadly, only 48% of those people will actually act on it and say anything. The remainder stay quiet, which makes it exceptionally hard to tackle. In the last NHS survey, it suggested that 24%, nearly 1 in 4 NHS workforce, had been bullied by a colleague in the previous year. And again, less than half of those people will raise that. An ACAS study a couple of years ago suggested that the total cost of workplace bullying to the UK is £18 billion per year. That's £545 per employee in the UK. So what are the effects of bullying in an organisation? Well, to the individual, you get a general loss of self-esteem. There's personal stress for the victim and often for their families. There's reduced engagement, motivation and productivity. There's actually reduced engagement amongst colleagues. When a colleague sees somebody else being bullied, their own motivation at work drops. Then potentially medical complaints. When an individual is extremely stressed as a result of bullying, there are statistics to show they take considerably more time off work, considerably more sick leave, and actually there's even a greater incidence of suicide amongst people who have been bullied, quite significantly so. This also leads to an increased churn in staff, the potential for legal costs and HR costs, and particularly worrying in the NHS compared to other organisations. The reduced performance reduces patient safety. It makes people more likely to make mistakes, reducing patient safety, and it makes people less likely to question the decisions others are making, reducing patient safety. Conversely, the bully themselves may be able to carry on without being questioned in ways which are unsafe for patients. I mentioned the costs of bullying to organisations, and at a time when resources are stressed, people may say, well, can we afford the focus to tackle this issue? I would say the very opposite. At a time when your resources are stressed, can you afford not to tackle this issue? And by having some numbers available of the potential costs, the potential savings and the potential benefits for your organisation, it gives you more strength to go back to management and say, do you realise if we tackle bullying, how much we can save? So the ACAS figures suggest that bullying costs £554 per employee. Take an organisation, take an NHS trust with 5,000 staff. That's £2.7 million that's wasted on bullying if you're a normal organisation. That seems a lot. And so we ran through the figures and said, well, how might you get to that? Well, suppose 1% of your staff leave over a year because of seeing bullying, and it takes £5,000 to recruit a new member, and the costs around leaving and retraining a new person. That's £250,000 a year. Take 5 material HR cases, possibly even not going to a legal case, but cost of £30,000 each. That's another £150,000. Suppose 20% of the workforce, most of the people bullied, are a little less productive. And we've just said 5%. It's not actually a huge amount when you consider what bullying does to people. That would be another £1.3 million. And suppose 25% of your workforce takes off 5 extra days sick. That is almost another £1 million a year. That actually gets to the 2.7 million that ACAS would get us to. So next we move on to how do we stop bullying in organisations, and particularly the NHS. The first step has to be a really clear, unequivocal commitment. And that commitment has to be around both the objective of stamping out bullying, but the way staff in the organisation treat each other. So a commitment to the fact that we always treat each other with respect. Or alternatively, we never fail to treat each other with respect. And I like the never failing to treat each other with respect, because failing it is when people in an organisation don't treat each other with respect, and it's a failing at management and senior management level to ensure that that's the case. And that phrase really, we never fail to treat each other with respect, moves the onus from the victims of bullying to the management to resolve this problem. And the second part of that should be a commitment that management never fails to call out bullying. That commitment has to be the first step on the road to stopping bullying in organisations. So we talked just about the clear, unequivocal commitment to stopping bullying. But what are the steps next? Well, first of all, have a clear, well set out, accessible policy on bullying. Ensure that all of your staff are both aware of that policy, know where to find it, and have read it. Make utterly clear and unequivocal the communication of the expectations of behaviour. Train managers in spotting and stopping bullying. We talked before of the telltale signs of bullying. Make sure that your management are aware of those telltale signs. Make sure that all management realise that stopping bullying is their responsibility. They should always call out wrong behaviour early in the day. And the earlier in the day you act, the easier it is. The problem doesn't spread, it doesn't get mimicked by other people. And actually, if you call people out earlier in the day, not only is it beneficial to the organisation and the victim, it's also benefit to the perpetrator, because potentially they can be in a position where they don't actually ruin their careers as a result of this. Create a culture of respectful feedback. And there's a wider issue as well, a contextual issue, that as an organisation you have to commit to getting your operations right. If the organisation isn't honest, then people within it won't be honest. But when things do go wrong, you need appropriate reporting routes. And those routes should make it clear that at times they will be confidential, and even at times they will be anonymous, because we mentioned before that up to 50% of people in an organisation won't raise these problems because of fear. So confidential and anonymous lines are appropriate at times if all the other steps above have failed. Then ensure that when you do have a grievance process, it's clear, it's fair, and it's timely. One of the very worst things you can do is drag your heels when problems are raised, because then other things are continuing in the organisation around it. And make sure that there aren't any repercussions or reprisals permitted on those who do raise the problem of bullying, as long as it's been raised bona fide in good faith. And finally, you should as an organisation be measuring whether you're getting it right. Ensure that you are asking your staff on a regular basis, are we in the right place with bullying? Have we managed to stamp it out? Do you feel that you can raise it? Do you feel that you or your colleagues are subjects of bullying? So that's all from me on this video. I do hope you find it useful. If you need a copy of the slides, feel free to email me. It's got my email address on the next slide. And I really hope that you commit to stopping bullying, stopping destroying people's lives, stopping the patient safety issues it causes, and making your organisation run much more efficiently and better for everybody. Thank you.